Before you drift into sleep, close your eyes for a moment and imagine the roar of the city, the relentless tide of digital information, and the crushing weight of modern expectations. We live in an era of unprecedented abundance. Even modern monks in Japan live within this comfort, often possessing immense wealth that many would envy. But let us travel back 1,000 years, deep into the heart of ancient Japan, back to the Heian Era, the golden age of Kyoto. Deep in the misty peaks of the Japanese wilderness, did the monks of old seek the same kind of wealth? To find the answer, we must let the neon lights fade and sink our consciousness into the primordial darkness of those ancient, sacred mountains. It is 4 a.m. Here lies a pure darkness that modern eyes have long forgotten. The night is as thick as spilled ink, layering silence upon silence. In this void, a monk named Joshin opens his eyes. He was not always a man of the mountains. Joshin was once a high-ranking aristocrat in the imperial court. He wore silks of 100 colors, composed poetry at moonlit banquets, and stood at the very center of power and luxury. But now, his skin meets only the sumizome, the humble, ink-dyed robes of a forest hermit, and the piercing, crystalline air of the pre-dawn forest. Gong. From the direction of Mount Hiei, a bell tolls. Its vibration trembles through the atmosphere, soaking into the very stones of the mountain. This is not the sterile, mechanical ticking of a modern clock. It is a compassionate resonance, a reminder that your soul exists in this very moment. Joshin rises slowly and sits upon the frozen wooden floor. There is no central heating here, no memory foam mattress. He sleeps upon a hard plank covered by a thin linen cloth, yet it is this very hardness that anchors him to the earth. He strikes a flint in the dark. Clink, clink, the dry sound of sparks echoes in the stillness. This is not the light of a bulb, it is the fire of life itself. As he lights a tiny oil lamp, the flame reveals his only true asset, the one thing he traded his status and gold to obtain. It is a single, worn scroll of scripture and a simple clay incense burner. In this absolute darkness, the numbers in a bank account or the titles on a business card mean nothing. He feels only his breath mixing with the cold air, vanishing as a white mist. In the Heian Era, to renounce the world was to lose everything socially. Yet Joshin's face holds a profound peace that his former life of silver and gold could never provide. He chose to own nothing so that he might possess the universe itself. The moment before the sun crests the ridge is the blue hour. The entire mountain is submerged in a mysterious silence, as if trapped at the bottom of a giant sapphire. Joshin slips on his worn straw sandals and begins to walk the narrow path of the temple grounds, still slick with dew. The cold moisture against his soles awakens his senses one by one. With deliberate care, he heads toward the ancient well. For a Heian monk, the first task of the day is to draw Aka, the purest water to be offered to the Buddha. In our world, we turn a faucet and expect a limitless flow of filtered water. We boil it with the press of a button. But for Joshin, water is not a commodity to be consumed. It is a blessing held in trust from the earth. While the nobles of Kyoto spent fortunes building artificial springs in their gardens, the monk finds his wealth in the humble spring at his feet. He stands before the well and bows deeply toward the east. Creak, creak, creak. The dry sound of the rope against the pulley echoes through the sleeping forest. Then, a sharp splash as the bucket meets the surface. He draws the water up slowly, with full intention. Floating on the surface of the water is the last star of the morning. Joshin takes out a chipped ceramic bowl from the folds of his robe. It is nothing like the gold-leafed lacquerware or the precious porcelains imported from the Tang dynasty. Yet, he handles this broken bowl as if it were a sacred vessel containing the cosmos. He takes a sip, The ice-cold water travels down his throat, purifying his vital organs. In our modern search for expensive spas and urban wellness, are we not actually seeking this very thing? The primal connection found in a single cup of pure water. Modern faith is often measured by the size of a donation or the grandeur of a monument. But for Joshin, devotion is distilled into this one act, offering a cup of water. He needs no luxury brands, no advanced filtration. This shoku-yoku chishoku, the spirit of wanting little and knowing you have enough, is his true, unstealable treasure. As he carries the bucket back to the hall, his heart is free of doubt. In the city, life was a race for the newest and the best. Here, if the water is cold, that is enough for happiness. Finally, the sun peeks over the eastern range, casting long spears of golden light across the temple veranda. In these pillars of light, microscopic specks of dust dance in a silent, eternal ballet. Joshin picks up a long bamboo broom, which he crafted himself from the forest's edge. Swish, swish, swish. The sound of the broom against the stone floor creates a hypnotic rhythm. It is a world away from the mechanical roar of modern leaf blowers. For the Heian monk, cleaning is not a chore, it is Samu meditation in motion. With every stroke, he sweeps away the attachments and illusions accumulated in his mind. We moderns discard things as trash, but for Joshin, these fallen leaves are precious fuel for the coming winter. He is part of a perfect, harmonious cycle where nothing is wasted. The nobles in the capital employed hundreds of servants, so they would never have to touch the dirt. Joshin, however, cleans with his own hands, carries with his own feet, and pours his own life into the purification of this space. Swish, swish, as he works, the stones reveal their true faces, their textures polished by centuries, their cold strength. Joshin stops for a moment and looks up. The same transparent blue sky stretches above him that will stretch above us 1,000 years later. In Kyoto, he lived for the eyes of others. He worried about the color of his robes and the cleverness of his poetry to win social approval. But here, his only witnesses are the nameless birds and the mountain wind. He realizes that wealth is not the accumulation of things, but the clarity that remains after everything unnecessary has been stripped away. No matter how high our status or how efficient our technology, few luxuries can match the profound satisfaction of a freshly swept stone floor. His heart reflects the morning sun like a piece of polished blue slate. As you listen to the rhythmic swish of the broom, try to sweep away your own social masks. The cool breeze that follows is the true treasure of the Heian monk, a treasure worth far more than 10 million yen. Having warmed his body through the physical labor of the morning, Joshin places his hands upon the massive, weathered wooden doors of the main hall. The dry, heavy creak of the hinges swinging open sounds like a boundary breaking between the mundane world and a sacred realm of existence. A dense, intoxicating aroma of ancient cypress and centuries of burnt incense meets the morning chill, piercing the very depths of his senses. While modern temples might be equipped with ornate electric lighting or climate control, this Heian sanctuary offers only the flickering, ghost-like shadow of a single oil lamp and a silence so thick it feels physical against the skin. Joshin sits before the altar, first taking a moment to regulate his breath. His exhale vanishes as a white mist into the dark shadows of the rafters, replaced by the mountain's pure, sharp energy filling every corner of his lungs. He opens a single, worn scroll and begins to vibrate his lips. This is not mere reading or speaking. It is Shomyō, the pinnacle of Buddhist vocal music that reached its artistic perfection in the Heian Era. The sound begins as a low, deep drone, crawling along the floorboards like a ground mist, before rising into a graceful, undulating melody that seems to trace the gentle ridges of the surrounding mountains. The syllables are stretched and pulled, creating a tapestry of sound that passes through the vessel of his body and soaks into the thick cedar pillars, the layered roof tiles, and the ancient forest beyond. In our modern world, we consume healing music as passive observers through speakers. But for Joshin, Shomyō is an act of creating the universe's resonance from within, vibrating in harmony with all existence. The melody possesses a steady, heartbeat-like rhythm, yet changes its form as fluidly as a mountain stream. The Sanskrit syllables evoke an eternal timeline, traveling from ancient India across the Silk Road through the capital of the Tang dynasty to this very floorboard in Japan. These are not words to be understood by the cold intellect, but vibrations to be etched directly into the soul. While the nobles of Kyoto spent millions on extravagant orchestras and courtly banquets, Joshin performs the most luxurious music on earth, using only the instruments he was born with, his voice and his breath. Suddenly, the sharp, crystalline strike of a small bronze bell cuts through the air like a sliver of light. This merciful strike pulls his consciousness back from the edges of sleep to the absolute now. He realizes that the truth often lies in the pregnant silence between the notes. When the chanting finally ends, the stillness that follows has a different weight. It is not an empty void, but a fertile golden silence. Allow yourself to drift on the ripples of this ancient resonance. Let go of your social roles, your titles, and your financial goals. Become nothing but a sound, dissolving into the compassionate darkness of the Heian morning. The sun climbs higher, and the forest awakens in a vibrant chorus of life. This is the hour of the heartbeat of the grain. Joshin's morning work now shifts to the preparation of the food that sustains his life. In his hands is a small measure of brown rice, still encased in its thick, stubborn husks, received as a humble offering from a local farmer or harvested from his own tiny, rocky plot of land. Modern humans buy polished white rice from a supermarket and cook it with the simple press of a button. For the Heian monk, however, the act of eating was a sacred ritual born from the depths of exhausting physical labor. He places the rice into a small wooden mortar and grips a heavy pestle with both hands. A steady, hypnotic rhythm begins to echo through the earthen floor. Thud, thud, thud. With every downward strike, his shoulder blades move, his spine straightens, and his blood begins to pulse with a renewed vitality. In his former life as an aristocrat, he loathed the idea of dirtying his hands, leaving all sustenance to an army of servants. But now, as his own strength strips the husks from the grain, he tastes a sense of real life he never knew in the palace. There is an ancient saying that in every grain of rice, there dwell 8 million gods. For Joshin, this is no longer a theological concept, it is a visceral reality earned through sweat and effort. The perspiration dripping from his brow shines upon the grains like liquid jewels. This is the purity of labor for survival that we have traded away for memberships and efficient, soulless calories. Next, he splits firewood and coaxes a fire into the old stone hearth. The cheerful sound of fire-consuming wood mixes with the fragrant, sharp smoke of cedar leaves. As the smoke rises through the rafters toward the azure sky, it sends a silent but powerful message to the mountain. A human being is alive here today. One may possess millions in gold, but without knowing the joy of lighting one's own fire and washing one's own rice, can one truly be called wealthy? Within the inconvenience of this life lies a luxury that vibrates through all 5 senses. Use this rhythmic thud of the pestle as the rhythm of your own heart. Synchronize your breathing with the pulse of the earth. Feel the weight of the wood, the warmth of the fire, and the simple dignity of preparing a meal with your own 2 hands. High noon, the sun sits at the absolute center of the heavens, and the shadows of the ancient temple are at their shortest and sharpest. In a simple kitchen beside the hall, Joshin's meal is finally ready. To a modern gourmet or someone accustomed to the neon-lit restaurants of the city, this would look impossibly meager, a meal devoid of color, variety, or indulgence. It consists of a single bowl of steaming brown rice porridge, a side of wild greens gathered from the garden, and a cup of clear hot water with a single slice of radish. This is the origin of Ichiju Isai One soup, one side the foundation of the Japanese culinary philosophy. Before eating, Joshin recites a short, silent prayer, reflecting on the immense effort of the farmer and the elements that brought this food to his table. He asks himself if his own actions on this day are worthy of such a gift. He takes up his wooden chopsticks and brings a single mouthful of porridge to his lips. In our era of overabundance, we often swallow our food without truly tasting it, our minds already hunting for the next distraction or scrolling through a digital screen. Joshin chews. He chews 30 times, then 50 times, with a deliberate, quiet tenderness. As he chews, the hidden sweetness and the solar energy stored within the brown rice begin to bloom upon his palate. It tastes deeper and more life-affirming than any delicacy he ever ate at an imperial banquet in Kyoto. He realizes that with a little salt and a lot of gratitude, the whole world is a feast. No extra seasonings or elaborate plating are required here. With the best spice of honest hunger and a profound respect for the ingredients, a vast universe opens within this small wooden bowl. Today, people seek Zen diets for health or beauty trends, but for Joshin, this was a luxury called purity in poverty. This meal is not for the stomach's pleasure, but for the soul's nourishment. After finishing, he uses the remaining hot water to wash the bowl, drinking every last drop so that not a single trace of the earth's gift is wasted. He is part of a perfect, closed cycle of life. Step away from the waves of modern consumption and the race for higher salaries. Surrender to the simple, honest warmth of this bowl of porridge. As your stomach feels comfortably full, the thirst for more that plagues the modern mind begins to melt away like spring snow under the midday sun. The sun begins its slow, graceful descent toward the west. It is the hour of the sheep. In the long corridor of the old hall, the soft afternoon light filters through the ancient cypress pillars, casting long, elegant shadows that stretch like ink across the floorboards. Joshin places his writing desk where the light is most beautiful and begins to grind his ink with slow, deliberate circular motions. In our world, we tap glass screens with our fingertips, sending floods of information across the globe in a heartbeat. But for Joshin, the act of writing is a prayer, a total commitment of the soul into every drop of ink and every movement of the brush. Listen to the sound of the ink being ground against the stone. Shh, shh, shh. The sound of the ink stick sliding is like gentle waves washing over a midnight sandbar. This is not just preparation, it is a dynamic meditation intended to flatten the noisy ripples of the mind. In Kyoto, he used the finest imported inks to create flamboyant calligraphy designed to impress his peers and assert his social authority. Now, he uses a simple, honest ink made from the soot of local mountain wood. The color is not a harsh, artificial black, but a warm, deep gray with infinite, subtle gradations. He lays out a sheet of hemp paper and places his brush upon the surface. Feel the slight, tactile resistance as the tip of the brush meets the paper. Sense the presence of the ink as it is slowly absorbed into the organic fibers. In our chase for efficiency and speed, we have left behind this profound luxury, the luxury of being entirely immersed in a single, quiet, non-productive task. He writes, character by character, in perfect sync with his breathing, kanji zai bosatsu. While he writes, he forgets he was once a noble with a six-figure status. He forgets he is alone in the mountains. There is only the black trail left by the brush and the rhythmic expansion of his lungs. Outside, the wind whispers through the bamboo grove, but his heart is a pool of absolute stillness. In the Heian Era, it was believed that copying a sutra was equivalent to carving a physical statue of the Buddha. But for Joshin, the merit is the no-mind of the moment itself. For those of you chased by deadlines and the digital hum of the city, listen to the brush sliding on the paper and feel your own internal noise begin to fade. When the scroll is finally finished, there is no ego of achievement, only a vast, cooling sense of emptiness. Because he owns nothing, the weight of this single brushstroke fills his soul completely. He looks at the wet ink drying in the afternoon air and sees not just words, but the trace of a soul that has found its center. The afternoon light turns to a rich, heavy gold, and the shadows of the trees stretch across the forest floor like reaching fingers. It is the hour of the monkey. Joshin leaves the dim, incense-scented confines of the temple and steps into the vibrant, breathing forest. This is not a casual stroll or a hike. It is Kinhin walking meditation. Modern humans walk to reach a specific destination or to satisfy a digital step counter on their wrist. But Joshin walks with no destination in mind and no record of his progress. He simply etches each step into the soft earth. Zaku, Zaku, Zaku. The sound of dry, brittle leaves crushing underfoot is the earth's way of talking back to him. Deep in these mountains, there is a life force that far surpasses the artificial, manicured beauty of the capital. With every step, he feels the hardness of the ground, the cool dampness of the soil, and the ancient strength of the roots hidden beneath. No matter how high our skyscrapers or how comfortable our cars, nothing can match this primal security, the feeling of being physically tethered to the earth. He pauses to touch the trunk of an ancient giant covered in emerald moss. He feels the rough, gnarled texture of the bark and the weight of a life that has simply been there for centuries, watching the world change. A gust of wind blows through the canopy, and the forest sighs as one massive organism. He realizes that he, too, is an inseparable part of this forest. In the city, life was a constant battle of comparison, a need to prove who he was to people who didn't matter. But here, he is just a breathing life. Six-figure wealth and high social rank mean absolutely nothing to the deep silence of the woods. The birds sing without knowing he was once a noble. The wind brushes his cheek regardless of his past income or his current poverty. Listen to the rhythm of these slow, heavy footsteps and try to leave your own social titles behind with every stride. A walk with no destination is perhaps the very rest we need most in the long, exhausting journey of life. To simply walk, to simply exist. This radical simplicity is the medicine that heals the exhausted modern soul, stripping away the layers of pretense until only the truth remains. The sky stains with a deep, bruised crimson, and the mountain ridges turn into sharp silhouettes of dark purple. It is the hour of the rooster. Joshin sits on the open veranda facing the west, watching the sun sink slowly, inevitably, below the jagged horizon. In the Heian Era, people looked at the sunset to envision the pure land and pray for eternal peace. In our modern lives, we turn on the lights the moment dusk arrives, stubbornly rejecting the night so we can continue our frantic, productive activity. But for Joshin, twilight is the most sacred time of all, the moment when the boundaries between this world and the next begin to dissolve. The colors shift from a blinding, regal gold to a burning orange, then finally to a quiet, bruised violet. He watches every second of this change, having discarded all words and all thoughts. He knows that beautiful things are precious precisely because they drift away. Here lies the heart of the Heian aesthetic, mono no aware the pathos of things. The sunsets he saw from his palace in Kyoto were beautiful, but they were always clouded by the anxieties of tomorrow's politics and the greed of his peers. The sunset he sees now is reflected in a heart as clear as a mountain lake. Even with 10 million in assets, one cannot hold back this moment for a single second. True wealth is not the possession of things, but the ability to fully enjoy this never-to-be-repeated moment as it vanishes. As the sun disappears, the mountain temperature drops sharply, and the evening cicadas begin their mournful, rhythmic song. It is a sound that signals the definitive end of the day and reminds us that our lives, too, exist within a limited, beautiful circle of time. Impermanence is not something to fear. It is a part of the great cycle of nature, a necessary preparation for a deep and restorative rest. Joshin waits for the darkness to embrace the world as if welcoming an old friend. Imagine this crimson light melting behind your eyelids and validate that you have existed fully today. Even with nothing, you have spent this day with profound depth. That satisfaction will light a warm fire in your heart, guiding you toward a deep, restorative sleep. The sun, that great source of life, has now fully hidden itself behind the western ridges, and the world is swallowed by a bottomless, velvet ink. It is the hour of the dog. In modern Japan, and indeed across the globe, we have conquered the night with the flick of a switch, turning the darkness into just another hour of activity. But for Joshin, living alone in the heart of the mountains, the night is a sacred return to our original, smaller selves, a time to reconcile with the vast, encroaching shadow. Joshin kneels quietly before the soot-stained altar and takes the flint stones in his hands. Clink, clink, sparks dance in the void for a fleeting second. This is not the sterile, invisible energy of electricity. It is a primal light, born from the strike of stone against iron, requiring human intention to exist. Finally, the flame catches the oil in a small clay dish, and a tiny lamp, the Shomyō, stands up, wavering yet defiant against the dark. This light is far too weak to illuminate the corners of the small hut. Yet, it is precisely because the light is so fragile that the darkness around it feels deeper, more mysterious, and strangely more compassionate. A modern person, earning a six-figure income and living under a crystal chandelier, might never know the sheer weight of prayer contained in such a single, tiny flame. Joshin gazes into this light, offering gratitude for the safety of the day and praying for the peace of the people living in the valleys below. As the flame dances in the mountain breeze, Joshin's shadow stretches across the old walls like a giant, then shrinks back like an infant. It is as if the man who held a role in the world and the soul that exists beyond that role are having a silent conversation. Where there is light, there is shadow. Where there is life, there is the rest of death. The Heian monk saw the entire logic of the universe within this dying flame. In Kyoto, he spent nights under the glow of expensive beeswax candles, dreaming of power and unquenchable desires. Now, he finds a pure nothingness in this flicker, where all attachments have finally burned away. In the unlit corners of the room, an old box of scriptures and a worn water jar sit as silent witnesses, part of the darkness itself. They are the few threads tying him to this world, yet even their presence becomes blurred in the swaying light. As you listen to the faint crackle of the flame and imagine the scent of the burning oil, allow the lights of your own outer world to be extinguished one by one. The darkness is not a place of fear. It is the warm, silent womb we inhabited before we were born. Using this tiny lamp as your only guide, let your consciousness sink slowly inward into the deepest, most quiet recesses of your mind. The night deepens further, and the density of the air seems to increase as we enter the hour of the pig. Joshin moves to the veranda, where the moonlight spills in, sitting with his spine reaching straight toward the heavens. He enters the state of zazen, seated meditation. On this cloudless winter night, the pale moonlight flows into the room like a cold waterfall, or perhaps a sheet of pure white silk spread across the floor. For the Heian hermit, this is the most luxurious moment of the day, when the boundaries of the individual self dissolve into the breath of the universe. In our daily lives, we are always trying to be someone, a capable professional, a loving partner, a successful earner. But in the state of zazen, all these masks fall away like autumn leaves dropping into a stream. Joshin, Chosoku, Joshin, the regulation of body, breath, and mind. Joshin draws the cold air deep into his lungs, bringing the life energy of the earth into every single cell. Then, he exhales a long, thin thread of breath, releasing the last drop of attachment and any lingering echoes of his former glory in the capital. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm begins to synchronize with the swaying of the forest trees, the ceaseless murmur of the valley stream, and the very rotation of the earth itself. Life in the city was a relentless cycle of numbers and comparisons: who earned more, who drove the finer carriage. But under this impartial moonlight, a six-figure salary and a nameless stone on the path are treated as equals. Mere drops in the great ocean of existence, the shell of the ego melts away, leaving only the phenomenon of breathing. Imagine your own body becoming transparent, as light as the moonlight itself, freed from the heavy pull of gravity. The thoughts that drift into your mind are merely clouds passing through a night sky. Watch them, but do not chase them. You are simply sitting. You are simply existing. In that simple fact, the universe is perfectly complete. This is the ultimate non-productive time, where no results are achieved and no value is added. It is the very thing the modern world fears most, yet it is the deep, spiritual breath that our exhausted souls crave above all else. The date changes, and the time of all things is reset in the hour of the rat. Every activity of the day has come to an end, and all living things sink toward the abyss of sleep. It is the hour of the circle. Joshin lies down upon a thin, hard linen futon spread over the cold wooden floorboards. There is not a trace of the softness he once knew in the silk bedding of the Kyoto palaces. Yet, to a body that has walked the earth, pounded grain by hand, and chanted from the heart, this hardness feels like the ultimate embrace of the earth itself. Today, I have lived with sincerity and to the best of my ability. That quiet satisfaction settles upon his eyelids like a comforting weight. Modern humans often lie on high-end mattresses, clutching smartphones while harboring anxieties about tomorrow or regrets about yesterday. But Joshin has no physical assets to protect and no social status to fear losing. He possesses only the unshakable fact that he has used these 24 hours with deliberate care and love. He closes his eyes in the pitch-black quiet, a deep sense of relief washing over him. Behind his eyelids, the coldness of the morning water, the shine of the swept stone steps, the scent of ink from the sutra, and the crimson of the sunset appear as fragments of a fading dream before vanishing into the mist. Even with millions in wealth, one cannot buy this sleep, a sleep accompanied by total soul fulfillment. True wealth is not found in what we own, but in the nagi, the absolute stillness of a heart that can sleep without being tied to anything or rejecting anything. In the deep mountains of the Heian Era, the moonlight quietly illuminates the monk's humble hut. The gods of the forest have also begun their great, rhythmic breathing, enveloping the entire mountain. Joshin's consciousness sinks slowly into a deep, sapphire blue ocean, the primordial sea of the unconscious. There is no self there, no others, no past, and no future. There is only a gentle, eternal peace. Following Joshin's deep, regular breathing, let go of your final piece of consciousness. Leave behind every burden, every name, and every number of this day. Be embraced by the kindness of the Heian night. Because you have nothing, you can now contain everything. Welcome to the world of dreams. Good night.